morning, Ms. Hofmeyer. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Chair.
Are we ready?
We are indeed, Chair, subject to one aspect that I'd like to raise with you. Ms. Memela is here to give evidence today. She has raised with me, however, a few moments ago when she arrived, that she would like an opportunity to consider the bundles of documents that have been prepared for her evidence today. The legal team of the Commission certainly has no difficulty with that. As I've explained to Ms. Memela, the bundles comprise initially a statement that she submitted, I think it was last week, after many months of engagement with the Commission's investigators and legal team, and a position that she took in January that she did not want to provide an affidavit, nor did she want the assistance of the Commission in preparing one. So her bundle comprises the statement that she then did submit, which she makes clear is not an affidavit in the statement, as well as numerous documents that came through with it. We weren't certain how to arrange them because they weren't identified as annexures to the statement, but we have put them in as best an order as we can. And then beyond that in the bundle, as is usually the case in these proceedings, there's an additional document section, which comprises documents that have been discovered in the course of the investigation and which Ms. Memela will be referred to in the course of her evidence today. So it would be our submission that we should take an adjournment just to facilitate Ms. Memela familiarizing herself with the bundle. I did discuss with her earlier half an hour to an hour's adjournment. She seemed to indicate that that would be adequate, but possibly she'd like to make some representations in relation to that.
Ms. Memela, good morning.
Good morning, Chair.
You confirmed that you would like to have some opportunity to go through the bundle?
Yes, Chair, given the fact that there are additional documentation that I might not have seen.
Okay, I think
Yes.
just bring the mic closer to you. I can't hear you very well.
Yes, Chair.
Yes, you said something. I just want you to repeat.
Yes, I've requested like maybe 30 minutes of your time for me to go through the files that I've just received now. And then given the fact that like there are additional documentation that maybe I may have not seen. So I just want to go through that, and then I think I will be ready, and then I'll have 3 requests before we start.
Yes.
I don't know if I can make the request now or afterwards, after I have sworn in it. Or...
Well, let's deal with the other issue first.
Okay.
Would 30 minutes be adequate for you to look at the bundle?
I believe so, because most of the information here is coming from me, but
Okay.
I just wanted to check the additional info
Yes.
so that I familiarize myself with it.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Maybe you should mention now your other requests, and then I can see whether we should deal with them now or we should deal with them later after the adjournment.
Or the requests?
Yeah.
Okay, the first request, Chair, is that since I had mentioned on my email to the Commission that my lawyer is not available, she will be in Cape Town until Monday. So I'm unrepresented right now. So I was going to request the chairperson to protect my rights, guide me, and so that maybe I don't end up self-implicating myself without even realizing. And then the second one will be, I will ask for your guidance, in answering certain questions that maybe people have not been given notice, which is the rule of the Commission, where people have not been given the notice 3.3, that I'm going to mention them. So there, I'll need your guidance as well if I'm obliged to answer to those questions.
Well, was that one? You said you had 3 requests, is that right?
I think I've...
What's the other one?
Yeah, no, I think I've mixed the two. Where it looks like the question 6.2...
Protection and...
I may end up incriminating myself.
And about 3.3 notices.
Yeah.
Well, the legal team would have seen your statement, and if the names that you are talking about are in your statement, they will have had a look at that, and I think during the adjournment, if need be, they can apply their minds further to that, to the question whether anybody should have been given a Rule 33 notice or not. Secondly, there might be difficulty. I mean, I would give you, like anybody, whatever protection in codes that I can give, but I wouldn't want you to complain later that you answered questions which maybe you shouldn't have answered because you'd incriminate yourself, and I didn't protect you. So I'm concerned about that. But from what I've seen, you are a lawyer. Is that all right?
Yes.
But I do know that even lawyers do need lawyers for advice.
Yeah.
So I think it's something that you may wish to reflect on during the adjournment as well.
Okay.
And the legal team, Ms. Hofmeyer, would be happy to talk to you insofar as you may wish to talk to her to ascertain their position. We do the best we can to make sure that everyone who appears here is treated fairly, but where it needs to, we need to be firm, we will be firm. But I just don't want you or your lawyer later on to complain that the chair should have said, don't answer that, because all I know is what is here.
Yeah.
I don't know anything else, whereas your lawyer would know whatever else you may have told your lawyer. So, Ms. Hofmeyer, do you want to say anything about the requests?
Just in relation to, if I can pick up the second one first, which I think is the one you dealt with first, the question about Rule 33 notices.
Yes.
Chair, Ms. Memela was quite clear in her statement provided to the Commission right at the end that she was not implicating anyone. That has been Ms. Memela's consistent position in her interactions with the Commission. And it was off the back of that that we considered the statement in its totality. She does refer to people, of course, as she must tell the story, but given her clear indication that she was not implicating anyone, no Rule 33 notices have been sent out pursuant to receiving her statement. It's another matter, as we always encounter in the course of evidence,
yes.
But we could, my proposal is that we address that if and when it arises.
Yeah, okay.
In relation to the second aspect, insofar as legal representation is concerned, until yesterday, I think we understood that we would receive an application from Ms. Memela's lawyer for her not to appear. She has clearly been engaged with lawyers in the lead up to today, insofar as she indicated to the Commission on Wednesday that we would be receiving that. So it would be our submission that we continue with the evidence. Ms. Memela is a lawyer and admitted advocate, and if at a point a question is asked and Ms. Memela believes that her answer would incriminate her in any criminal conduct, she should alert us to that, and we can take it from there. That would be our proposal.
What do you think of that? Namely, you continue to make yourself available, you give evidence, you answer questions, but if there are questions where you feel that your answer might incriminate, you might incriminate yourself, then you indicate that you have, you believe that answering the question would result in that, and then we can take it from there.
Yes, Chair. I confirm that I'm ready to start, provided that there are no, I'm comfortable answering certain questions.
Yes, yes.
And I just want to touch on the statement part where I actually insisted that it won't be an affidavit.
Yes.
It was because during the two meetings that I had with the team, the Commission team, they did not have specific questions for me. They actually relied on what I was putting on the table, and I even said in one of the emails that I will not be doing their job. You understand? My understanding is that if they are maybe see some sort of possible wrongdoing from other people, they should try and prove that, and then maybe I might collaborate that. But now I was called to discuss, like in general, like the items that are going to be discussed today. And I did ask for the specific written questions so that I know that I'm addressing the questions coming from them. So like that's the reason why I actually insisted on the statement, because like it was something that was coming from me in explaining the items, because they just like listed the items that they wanted to talk to me about. And in the meeting, like, I mean, they allowed me to actually start, give a background and stuff, and then jump in and ask certain questions. So I felt it is fair to me to actually not write an affidavit, because, like, I mean, it may feel as if I'm here to implicate somebody, and like, as it is known right now that people like keep on singing people's names, like sometimes unintentionally so and stuff like. So I did not want to be seen as I'm pointing fingers at people for something that I don't know what they've done, like in terms of like the wrongdoing.
But is your position also like Ms. Hofmeier's position, that she understands that your position is that in your statement that you supplied, you are not implicating anybody?
Yes.
You may be mentioning some names, but
yes.
you are not, you don't intend to implicate anybody.
Not that that statement said, it sounds like, I mean, I don't intend to tell the truth. I do intend to state the facts.
Yes,
like to a certain extent, that like they don't, like, I mean, I don't seem as if I'm crossing, like, I mean, I'm pointing fingers at people. I want, like, I came here because, like, I want to take accountability for any other decision that was taken by myself, and like also to justify where there are certain decisions that, like, I mean, the commission thinks were not in line with the processes and whatever.
Yes. Okay. No, that's fine. Well, I won't speak for the team that consulted you, but in the course of investigation, sometimes you do want somebody who you believe may have information that's relevant to say, tell us what you know about this, without any other specific questions. And after you have been told, then sometimes you might have specific questions. So sometimes you just want to talk to different people who might have information that's relevant, and arising out of that discussion, sometimes you then have specific questions. So I thought I would just clarify that for them. Okay, we are at about 18 minutes past 10. We could resume at 22:11. If we want to make it more or less 30 minutes.
I think that would be 10 to 11, Chair.
Yeah, 10 to, I'm sorry.
Not at all.
10 to.
Indeed.
10 to 11. Shall we do it that way?
Indeed.
Okay. We will then adjourn Ms. Memela, and then we will resume at 10 to 11. We adjourn.
Thank you.
All rise.
ready.
We are indeed, Chair.
Ms. Memela, did the 30 minutes, was it enough?
It was enough, Chair.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Okay, let's proceed then. I think administer the oath of affirmation.
Please state your full names for the record.
I'm Nontsasa Memela.
Do you have any objection to taking the prescribed oath?
No.
Do you consider the oath to be binding on your conscience?
Yes.
Do you swear that the evidence you will give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If so, please raise your right hand and say, "So help me God."
So help me God.
Thank you. Ms. Hofmeyer, do you know what arrangements the transcribers might be having with the legal team to ensure that if there are words that for which they need spelling, that they get to be told afterwards whether they get the statement to see those words or names, or whether is there any existing arrangement? Because otherwise I think we don't always give the spelling. And do you know if there's any
Chair,
existing arrangement?
I'm not aware of an arrangement. That doesn't mean
Yes.
one doesn't exist. I'm just not
Yes.
privy to it. What I do know, though, is as shortly after the evidence is completed as possible, the statement is uploaded onto the website, which is, of course, available to everyone, including transcribers. But I can ask that some inquiries be made just as to what the nature of that arrangement is, because it might then obviate the need for us repeatedly to give spellings, or it might
Yes.
indicate that we need to do so more than we have been.
Yes. Because I would imagine that maybe if they were to have access to a witness statement soon after, they could pick up
Indeed.
the spelling for
Indeed.
certain names. Otherwise, we would need to give the spelling each time, which
Indeed.
hasn't been easy.
No, and one does forget, and I'm
Because,
certainly including myself in that.
because we are focusing on the
Indeed.
substance.
Indeed.
So I guess they are hearing what I'm saying,
Yes.
and Reverend Stimela is hearing what I'm saying. Something needs to be done. In the meantime, maybe we will try and do that until we are told that there is an arrangement.
Yes.
We'll try and give spelling for names that we think they might, that are not English. We think they might have a problem spelling, but some, like certain surnames, might be English but might be difficult to
Indeed,
spell.
indeed.
So, okay, all right, let's try that.
Thank you.
Maybe we'll start with spelling her name, Miss Memela's name.
Indeed.
Do you want to do that?
Let me do that just in the course of requesting that we enter into the record
Yes.
as Exhibit DD 25A and 25B. Those are the bundles containing Ms. Nontsasa Memela's statement, and that is spelled Nontsasa, and the surname is Memela, Memela. The first bundle A comprises her statement and additional documents she supplied to the Commission, as well as in the remainder of bundle A and into bundle B, certain additional documents that the Commission has assembled.
Ms. Memela's statement and annexures in the file which contains the statement will be admitted and marked DD25A. That is Exhibit DD25A, and the annexures that are in the other file, that will be Exhibit DD25B.
Thank you, Chair. In addition to those two files, we've made reference in the course of the week to the fact that Ms. Memela has put in two applications to cross-examine both Ms. Sambo and Mr. Himan. We have prepared those in the cross-examination files that are usually handed up. So if I may beg leave to hand
Yes.
those up to you. Ms. Memela has been given her copy already.
Okay.
Thank you. Ms. Memela, if we can just begin with some housekeeping aspects. If you turn to Exhibit DD25A at page 1, what is that document? Just page 1. If you start at page 1, can you identify that document for us? Indeed.
Page 1, please put on your mic. When she refers to page numbers, she'll be referring to the red numbers on the top right-hand corner of each page.
Okay.
But she won't mention 00.
All right.
She'll say page 1
Okay.
and 2 and so on. Okay.
All right. Okay, so this is my statement that I made after the voluntary meeting that I had with the investigating team and the legal team of the commission. So
Thank
I
you.
reduced the discussion that we had to writing.
And if you go to page 26 in the same file, Exhibit DD25A, is that your signature on the page? Apologies, did I say 26? Page
26 will be-
26. 26.
Oh, page 26.
Yes.
Okay. This is my signature. Yes, it's my signature.
Thank you. And do you confirm as true and correct the contents of the statement?
I confirm.
Then, in relation to your statements accompanying your applications to cross-examine, I'd like to do a similar thing. If you can first take up the application to cross-examine Ms. Sambo, that is indexed as SEQ 04/2020. Do you have that available to you?
Yes.
And if you turn to page 3 in that file, can you identify that document for us, please?
That's my statement.
And if you go over to page 10, can you identify the signature on that page?
That is my signature.
And do you today confirm under oath that the contents are true and correct?
Yes, I confirm.
Thank you. And let's do the same, if we may, for the application to cross-examine Mr. Human. That is indexed as 05/2020. And again, if you will turn to page 3 of that file and identify the document.
Yes, it is my statement.
And if you go to page 8, can you identify the signature on that page, please?
Yes, it is my signature.
And finally, do confirm under oath today that the contents of that statement are true and correct.
I do.
Thank you.
I see, Ms. Memela, that you have already dealt with the reason why your statement is not an affidavit. We had occasion yesterday, I think, or the day before, to discuss that issue of statements that are not under oath. But your applications for leave to cross-examine, I see they are also supported by statements that are not under oath or that are not affirmed declarations. Please take steps to make sure that those are, at least those are affidavits. So later on, you could do that to make sure they comply with the rules.
With the rules, okay.
Yeah. So you could do an affidavit and confirm that statement, those statements are true and correct, just so that your applications comply with the rules.
I'm prepared to do that, Chair.
Okay, all right. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Ms. Memela, you are a lawyer, is that correct?
Yes, I am.
And when did you obtain your law degree?
2006.
And you've also indicated in your statement, I'm picking it up now at page 2 of bundle DD25A, that you did a postgraduate diploma after your law degree. What was that in?
It's a postgraduate diploma in drafting and interpretation of contracts,
And when did you complete that?
2010.
And for the sake of completeness, you can just confirm that your law degree is an LLB degree.
Yes, Chair.
Okay.
Thank you. And you are also an advocate, is that correct?
Yes.
And when were you admitted as an advocate?
I think in 2012.
Thank you. I'd then like to move to your position at SART, because I understand from your statement, which has now been confirmed under oath, if we go to paragraph 6 on page 2, that you were in an acting position as HOD of Procurement. Is that correct?
Okay, can you repeat your question?
Yes.
Yeah.
I was interested in the positions you've held at SART, SAA Technical,
Okay.
and I had picked up at paragraph 6 that you held an acting position in the role of HOD Procurement at a particular point. When did that start?
Okay, if I remember correctly, started in September, between September and October 2013, when the Chief Financial Officer of SAT resigned, and Procurement at that time, it was reporting to him. So then it was divided between myself and the person who was acting as a CFO after Mr. Zulu. So like I was acting from 2013, I'm not sure about the month, but like between September or October.
And where were you before that?
Before acting?
Yes.
Okay, I joined SAT as a senior legal and contracts management specialist.
And when was that?
That was on the 15th of April 2013.
And before joining SART?
Before joining SAT, I was at the Development Bank of Southern Africa, DBSA, as the contracts procurement specialist, and later became group legal advisor.
And for what period were you at the Development Bank?
Chair, I did not familiarize myself on my CV, but
Yes.
I think it was between 2011 to 2013.
Right.
I'm not sure about the
months.
the months. Yeah.
So before you joined SART, you'd completed that postgraduate diploma in drafting and interpretation of contracts, and you'd been admitted as an advocate. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you. If we can talk about then your progression from acting position to a permanent position, because I understand that you then were appointed in a permanent position around November 2015. Is that right?
No, I think 2014.
Oh.
Yeah, I think 2014. The position was then revived back to the structure. There was a position of the HOD procurement before in the SAT structure, but when I joined, it was not there. It was reporting directly to the CFO. So the position was advertised, and then I went through the recruitment and selection process. Then I got the position, so I was now permanent from 2014 as the HOD procurement.
And when did you leave SART?
When did I leave SAT? Oh, I left SAT, okay. Chair, I'm not sure how these questions are related to the evidence. Maybe I will find out later, or maybe
it's just to understand.
To understand where I am.
Okay. Yeah, they are innocuous
Yes.
questions, just to give us a picture about where you have been in terms of work, how long you were with SAT.
Okay, because I've signed some sort of an agreement which has got a provision confidentiality between SAT and myself, but
Well,
then
well,
I will.
all she wants is when did you stop being an employee of SAT?
SAT.
Yeah, that's all she wants. Yeah.
Okay, but there are more information on that, like that, how did I leave SAT? And then, I was suspended in 2018, May, for certain charges, including some of them, being the items here. And then I went through the disciplinary hearing, which was chaired by Advocate Kasim. In his outcome, he did propose that I be moved from procurement to legal division. But we did not really agree because from my side, I did not think he had the terms of reference to actually propose that. So then he proposed that, okay, then dismissal is fair and appropriate. Then I went to the CCMA and applied for arbitration, and I won the case on the 18th of October 2019. I was supposed to start go back to work on the 1st of November 2019. Then when it was just one day for me to go back, then I received an email that they would like to review and stuff like that. But then the discussions about settlement followed after that. So we've just settled. I think we signed at the beginning of January this year.
Oh, okay.
A separation and mutual agreement.
So until you were an employee of SAT until sometime in January this year?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. If we pick it up at page 2 of your statement in DD 25A, you'll see in paragraph 6 there, you start to talk about some of your responsibilities in your role as head of department. Can you tell us what those responsibilities were?
Okay. In 2015, when I was confirmed as the HOD procurement, I was only heading strategic procurement and operational purchasing. Strategic procurement consists of the long-term tenders from 3 years to 5 years, where we go out on a tender process, and then operational purchasing are a day-to-day buying of spares. So I was responsible for that from 2014 to 2015. And then from 2015, there was a restructuring that took place at SAT. And then myself and other 3 HODs, had an additional responsibilities. And then my position was changed from HOD procurement to HOD SCM. And that's where then I was stating my portfolios. I had senior managers reporting to me, which is legal and contracts management, BEE and supplier development, materials management, logistics and inventory, and I don't know if I forgot the other one. Yeah.
I think you have covered them.
Yes. So those were the portfolios that I was responsible for, and there were senior managers there that were responsible for that and reporting to me.
Ms. Memela, I've picked up from this statement and your others that you appear to have had quite an important role to play in supplier development. Is that a fair comment?
That is a fair comment, Keith, because Chair, supply development and BEE was part of my job description. Other than that, it was also part of the strategy enterprise development and also part of the business scorecard of the company. I don't know if maybe we'll come back to this, but I would like to go in detail about the role that I was expected to play.
Please do.
Okay, so on the supply development, Chair, why it started. When I took over SAT as HOD procurement, there was no BEE suppliers in our database. They were buying directly from the multinational companies, and if it was the local company, it all was white owned companies. So because of the supply development that was in place at that time, and the fact that BBBE required also the state-owned companies to actually have a certain level of BEE status, when I joined Procurement, SAT was sitting at level 6, which is the worst for a state-owned company. It means that, they were not involved in the national agenda, transformational agenda. So then, I started, proposing, and of course, from SAA, they had drafted, enterprise supply development strategy in 2014, which allowed us, as from procurement, HR, and whoever is responsible for, making sure that the company adheres to the BBBE. And then one of the elements there says that the local suppliers should, we should promote the local suppliers to join ventures with multinational companies. So, Chair, I remember when I took over HOD procurement position, as I mentioned, there was no black-owned companies, and the new companies that came forward after the workshop that took place, about supply development and stuff, they did not have the knowledge in the aviation sector. So I had to open doors for them, and in doing that, work closely with them, guiding them, and asking also QA from SAT to guide them, making sure that whatever parts, for instance, that they buy on behalf of SAT are not bogus parts, and all those kind of things. And then I came up with a list of suppliers. I remember the first one was around maybe 11 out of 3,000 suppliers on the database. Nisambo was actually one of those suppliers that I opened doors for at SAT. It was not an easy journey. Of course, I had ruffled feathers because SAT Procurement had been just doing their thing on their own and just dealing with multinational companies and not giving any opportunities to the black companies in South Africa. So I was that involved. Yeah, so as we go on, you will see how much I was involved, in guiding some of them. Yes.
Would the NIP, the National Industrial Development Program, program have applied at the time to those multinational companies?
The NIP obligation was supposed to start applying as far back as 1999.
Correct.
For instance, for a tire contract, SAT entered into a tire contract in 1999. It's one of those evergreen contracts that SAT had. And then there was a logistic contract. There was components contract also, which I think started in 2008 with Air France and SAT. Before that, I think it was Lufthansa. But remember, the NIP obligation is managed and controlled by the DTI, not by the company. So I can't speak on behalf of the DTI, but I'm just saying they were supposed to have enforced and made sure that these multinational companies are giving something back to the country instead of just taking these huge contracts and not doing anything in terms of maybe transferring skills back to the country, technology and know-how. So after I had learned about the difference between NIP obligation requirements versus supplier development, then we find out that actually supplier development is part of the NIP obligation. It's you can't really apply both of them. So that's the reason then that I was pushing for supplier development to be applied at SAT, because that way we will have control and we'll be able to manage the relationship between multinational companies and local companies.
And what's supposed to be achieved by supplier development?
Chair, it's a long list. It could be training from multinational companies. For instance, I'll make an example. If there is a 5-year contract and one of the multinational companies have joint ventures with the local supplier, in a contract they would agree that they will be transferring skills, they will be training them, they will be transferring technology and know-how. And then the purpose of that is to ensure that when the tender goes out again, the local supplier is able to actually compete with these guys. You understand? Like, I mean, such as an MRO, they buy mostly from multinational companies, and like local suppliers did not have that knowledge, and they needed as much guidance as possible.
All of the objectives that you've listed there, training, skills transfer, exposure to technology, suggests to me longer-term development of the selected supplier. Is that a fair comment?
I guess that's your view. Like, I mean, it's relevant.
Sorry,
but like, I mean,
it's relevant or irrelevant?
I'm saying it's relevant. It is relevant, but just depending on how you interpret your long term. Long term could be 5 years. Within 5 years, like multinational companies, if they are working closer together and there's a watertight contract in place, they could like really transfer these skills, and then like that okay, by the end of that contract they are able either to go with these ones, or they have the freedom to actually approach others, or maybe bid on their own with partnership like with other like the new multinational companies.
So grow the selected supplier so that they can ultimately compete on their own terms. Is that a fair summary?
Okay, repeat that.
The idea of supplier development is to grow the supplier,
yeah,
so that at some point they can compete on their own terms.
That's one of them. Like, I mean, it could be a list of things that like I would like to get out of the supply development.
Anything else that comes to mind now?
Maybe it could be creation of work in South Africa, where maybe I will make an example, Chair, so that like you have a clear picture. For instance, with the tires, I will say like the current contract now is with Bridgestone, and they are based in Brussels. So Bridgestone will have a part site like where they are supposed to actually ship the tires to South Africa, and then like when the tires get to South Africa, I mean the container, there could be an agreement maybe between the Bridgestone and the local company that okay, you will be playing this role. You will, as soon as the ship gets to Durban, if it gets to Durban or wherever, you will then take over the transportation of the tires from Durban to SAT. You see, like, so like that's where maybe they would actually agree. So like, I mean, it's about that. Like, and remember, out of that phase, there will be people who are employed, and that's creation of jobs.
Thank you. Ms. Memela, I'd then like to move to page 3 of your statement in Exhibit DD 25A. You have a heading there.
Ms. Hoffman, I see we are at 19 minutes past.
Indeed.
But we had some adjournment earlier. Maybe we should take the tea break at 11:45.
Certainly.
Yes, okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'll just need somebody to remind me when we get there.
Yes, okay.
Right.
Would that be fine with you, Ms. Memela?
That's fine, Chair.
Okay, all right.
Thank you, Chair. Ms. Memela, we are at Exhibit DD 25A at page 3, and you have a heading towards the bottom of that page, Swissport in bold. Do you see that?
Yeah.
And then you start at paragraph 9 below that heading to say, what I recall during this time was that the board decided who should act as the CPO after the departure of Dr. Dawa at SAA. Do you see that?
Yeah.
Do you know anything about the circumstances surrounding Dr. Dawa's departure at SAA?
Okay, your question is quite... when you're asking like that, do I know the circumstances surrounding his departure? Do you mean, do I know the charges against him, like what happened and stuff?
Yes.
I do not.
You do not?
No.
Dr. Dawa has given evidence before this commission previously. Are you aware of that?
I am aware, but I was not watching.
Right. His evidence included the following. I'm going to just reference it because I do want to ask you some questions, because you were responsible for procurement in SART at a similar time that Dr. Dawa was responsible for procurement at SAA. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Right. So Dr. Dawa's testimony before this commission was that on the 2nd of October 2015. He was forced during the course of 8 hours on a day to sign certain letters of award to Swissport and Engen, and he was placed under great pressure to do so by the then members of the board of SAA, Ms. Kwinana and Ms. Mieni. That was pursuant to the SAA 30% set-aside policy. Are you aware of that policy?
I'm aware of the policy, 30% set aside, but I never applied it under such contracts.
Right. Well, nor did Dr. Dawa. His evidence was that he regarded that 30% set-aside policy as unlawful, and so he refused to sign agreements that would have applied it. His evidence was also that during that meeting he was threatened that on the following Monday, the EFF would be protesting at SAA, and they wanted all Zimbabweans out of SAA, and Dr. Dawa was a Zimbabwean, and so he feared for his safety at the time. He was shortly thereafter charged and went through a disciplinary process. Did you hold a view at the time about the lawfulness of the 30% set-aside policy?
Chair, with regard to the 30% set aside, from a legal point of view, it was not in line with the relevant legislations that are guiding the procurement processes in the state-owned companies. However, without defending the board, I believe that the reason maybe they wanted to apply such a percentage was to make sure that they are giving as much opportunity to black-owned companies as possible. Because I remember during that time, they started with a workshop and going around the country and introducing, the tenders and letting the local companies to know that they don't have to be scared to play a role in the aviation sector. It's not as difficult as it looks. So to answer the Council's question, from such side, I've never, or my team have never applied 30% set aside. Instead, we actually used 10%, from the BEE point of view, depending on the price, for instance 90-10 or 80-20, we actually followed that. The only certain things that we kept on maybe just putting in, it would be supply development as we were moving along. So I remember the board that was following the previous board of Ms. Mieni had asked myself as the head of supply chain for SAT and SAA to list the contracts that we had ensured that they adhere to the 30% set aside, and they thought there was that 30% set aside also at SAT, and we proved to them that we've never applied that until it was actually included in the legislation PPFA in 2017.
And
so just to get clarity on your answer to the question was whether your view at the time was that the 30% set aside was unlawful, and I think you have said that you believed that it was not in line with the Act.
Legislation, yes.
Yeah. So you believed it was unlawful.
Yes, Chair.
Yeah. Okay.
And were you aware that National Treasury took a similar view in 2015, late 2015?
Yes, I heard that they had sent a letter from National Treasury to the then acting CEO, Ms. Tulimshe. I think she had shared it with Procurement and stuff so I am aware of that letter from National Treasury.
Thank you. We don't need to go there for present purposes because your recollection is a good one, Ms. Memela, with respect. But Chair, just for the record, it is in Exhibit DD 25B at page 648. We've referred to it previously in the evidence of Dr. Dawa, and that was the letter of the Chief Procurement Officer of National Treasury, as you indicated to Ms. Mshe, indicating that the resolution of the board to set aside the 30% in its current form is not supported by any procurement legal framework and must be stopped with immediate effect. Ms. Memela, with that background in place, I'd like to move to the two transactions that the Commission is focusing on in its hearings at the moment. The first is the sale of the SART GPUs, and the second is the award of the components tender to the joint venture of JM Aviation. These are the two aspects that you have focused on in your statement because they were the two transactions that your engagements with the legal team and the Commission's investigators made clear to you were of relevance to our proceedings. So I'd like to give you an opportunity at the outset, if we can take the sale of the SART GPUs to start with, to explain to us what your role was in relation to that sale.
Chair, to answer that question, I had no role, nor did I initiate the sale of the GPUs. I have also proven that at CCMA. The sale of GPUs was within the delegation of authority of the board, and the submission to sell the GPUs was done by the previous acting CEO of SAT, based on the contract between Swissport and SAA. So it went to the board, and the board approved based on the contract that was in place. My understanding is that I did attach the minutes of the board, like on my answer, like just to show that who was there and how was it discussed, and like, I mean, on what basis did the board reach their decision. So you asked about my role. The only time I got involved was when, like, I was asked by the acting CEO to sit in the negotiation. Like, I mean, he actually received the proposal.
Was that Mr. Zwane?
No, it was not Mr. Zwane. It was Mr. Asin Malola Piri, who was acting at SAD at that time.
Okay.
Yes.
Chair, just for clarity, if I may just come in there because it's part of this milieu. At that stage, our investigations have revealed, and I think there has been evidence on this already, Mr. Zwane was in a CEO position at SAA, and yes, this did come out in previous evidence, and Mr. Piri was in the acting CEO role at SART. Thank you.
Yeah.
Apologies,
Thank
Ms.
you.
Memela.
Of course, part of the problem is that when we talk about SAT, in the context of these, SAA keeps coming in.
Yes.
So it's important to understand when you refer to an acting CEO or CEO, whether you're talking about SAT CEO or SAA CEO. So, yeah, okay, all right.
All right, Chair.
Yes.
Yes, so the acting CEO of SAT wrote a submission after, I don't know, like, I mean, if he received an instruction maybe to sell the GPUs, but I do understand that the submission was linked to the contract between Swissport and SAA. Yes, and then he did that, the submission, after he had received an email proposing to buy the GPUs from SAT. And then his response to the email, he said, he stated that, okay, like, I mean, he still has to go to the board and have the approval by the board, and then before he can go back to them and negotiate. So, like, after, indeed, like, he did exactly that. He went to the board, and then it was discussed, and then the board approved. And as the CEO, my role, let me give clarity on that, Chair. My role was reporting to the CEO. Yeah, so he gave me an instruction to sit and negotiate the proposal that was already sent to him. Yes, and like, it was not just me. I had other colleagues that were there, although, like, I mean, some, like, now, I think maybe out of fear, they saying, like, they did not attend. And of course, I don't have much proof to say, okay, you were there.
But if they were there, you say they were there.
Yes, they were there. Okay, I had.
They might not be attendance register.
Exactly, exactly.
If you know they were there, then you say they were there.
Yes,
Yeah.
so I had Mr. Chale Makaleng, whom was the owner of the GPUs, like his department was the owner of the GPUs, and then we had Stan Foslow, who was responsible for materials management, and then like I had also invited Leon Roberts, who was the logistics and inventory manager, he couldn't make it. He's the only one that I remember that couldn't make it. So, like, I mean, we were joined by the two members of the JM, Mr. Jules. No, like, it was Mr. Jules. I don't remember who the other one was, but, like, I mean, I think it was two of them. So, like, we discussed based on the proposal that they had sent to Mr. Malola Phiri before he wrote the submission to the board. So we started based on that, and we asked them what was their basis of the price that they had put on forward. And then, like, I mean, you'll see that, like, there was an email written back to me by Ms. Sokulu saying, okay, thank you for the meeting. This is the amount that, like, I mean, the GPUs or current GPUs are going for at that time. So that's where my involvement started, like, from the negotiation up to the time when the invoice was signed by the CEO and myself.
That meeting that you're discussing, I just want to be clear. You've mentioned Mr. Jules Ayres, Chair, reminding myself of our undertaking this morning. That's JULES AIRES. Was he present?
Mr. Jules, yes, he was in the meeting.
And you've mentioned a Ms. Sokulu. Was she present in the meeting?
I don't remember if he was present. Like,
okay.
I think, yeah. Like, but I think she was.
But
present.
You mentioned a email that she sent you that said thank you for the meeting. Does that help you recall?
Yes, I think she was, because I know it was two of them.
Right, and that's Sokulu, SOKHULU. And then who else was in the meeting? You said a Mr. Vosloo. Is that VOSLOO?
Yes.
And a Mr. Makaleng. Is that MAKALENG?
Yes.
And was that the meeting that occurred on the day prior to you receiving the email from Ms. Sokulu referring to the meeting?
Referring to the meeting, yes.
And is that the only meeting you had to discuss pricing with JM Aviation?
That was the first meeting that we had, like, because it was followed by the board resolution. So, like, I mean, we're following the board resolution and the instruction from the CEO to sit with them.
Are you sure about that chronology?
Chronology, like, I mean, in terms of, like, was that
the meeting preceded the decision of the board?
Yes, I'm sure.
Okay, thank you.
I wasn't sure earlier on whether you meant the resolution of the board came first and then the meeting.
Yes.
But you have just confirmed that the meeting happened before.
Yes, Chair. The board meeting happened before, after the submission by Mr. Malola Phiri to the board.
Yes.
It was discussed, and then, like, we negotiated after the board meeting.
Yes, okay.
Sorry, then there was some confusion because I thought that you just said that you had that pricing meeting before the board's decision.
It was afterwards,
right.
Because it was...
Oh, then there definitely is confusion.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so let's get that. The meeting that you have just talked about.
Yeah.
You say happened after the board had a meeting and made a resolution.
Yes, Chair.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then just to be clear so that we're not at cross purposes, was that the only pricing meeting at which the sale price between SART and JM Aviation was discussed?
Yes, like, I mean, according to the meeting, like, physical meeting, that was the only meeting. Afterwards,
right.
It was just, like, I mean, emails from
yes.
end to yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Just want to be clear about that. Right, then I'd like to move to the components tender. Ms. Memela, you will know that, and we have spent 2 days dealing with the various versions of this components tender, because it starts as early as the first one was in 2013, and then there's version 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. For today's purposes, I'd like to hone in on the ones that are really of most relevance to the Commission. But at any point that you feel you need to give some reference backwards, please do so. What I'd like you to explain to the Commission now, if you will, was your role, let's say from about 2014, in relation to the components tender.
Okay.
Yes, and just for a reference for you, you start your explanation of that at page 6 of DD 25A. The reason why I gave the introduction I did a moment ago is because a great deal of your initial discussion of this components tender does go through the history. And all that I'm saying to you is we have traversed the history over the last 2 days. So I would like to pick it up, if we may, in about 2014 to understand your role in relation to it. But you must not feel limited. If there's some aspect of what happened previously that you need to go to, please tell us that.
Okay, are you going to ask a question, or you want me to?
Well, what your role was. Could you start
okay.
with that? What was your role?
From 2014.
2014.
Okay.
Well, you might, Ms. Software, you might wish to mention some headings
Particular.
relating 2014 and after.
Yes.
That might help her to focus, on which you might wish her to focus.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Let me do that, Chair. Let's start in October of 2014, because October of 2014 is when the second 5-year tender was advertised. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So let's maybe take it from October 2014, and then you can track for us forward what your role in SART was relative to that procurement process.
Okay, Chair, in terms of the role, I'm trying to understand like the question, like when my
Okay,
role is asked.
let me assist you.
Yeah.
What Ms. Hofmeyr, I would like you to tell me is, if you look at that particular tender,
Yeah.
You would know, obviously, the steps that need to be taken
Yeah.
normally for a procurement process, and you would know what process, if any, was followed in regard to that one.
Okay.
And she then wants you to say, out of this process, this is where I got involved, this is where I got involved, I did this, I didn't do that. That's what she wants you to talk about for that tender and throughout the process, from the time the RFP would have been issued to the time it was withdrawn or cancelled or whatever the position.
Okay, Chair. I will try and be as brief as possible. I would like first to highlight the hierarchy of how things work in procurement.
Yes.
And how, like, until it's the board level, like, I mean, we run the process. So,
And I'm sorry, in answering the question, feel free to say, as head of procurement,
Yeah.
this is what your role normally would be.
exactly.
And
That's,
this is what it was in this particular case.
yes, that's
Yeah.
where I'm going.
Okay.
Yes, so I'm trying to explain that, okay, the tender and evaluation, voting and stuff is done by the CFST. It's called cross-functional selection team. In other companies, like it's usually called BEC, or like, you know, the people that like actually responsible for the evaluation. So the evaluation, the CFST is usually managed by a person from procurement who is now called the project manager, who is actually running with the whole process. And then like when they are done evaluating and coming up with the highest scoring bidder, they then make a recommendation to myself and then explain why they have decided on that one. Of course, like my role is to make sure that, like, I mean, I'm as independent as possible. I don't intervene or interfere with their decision, because remember, they're the ones who are sitting there and making the decision, like after they have voted and looked at all the elements that are applicable. So like from then, from the recommendation made by the CFST through the project manager, then it will come to me, and then I will have certain questions maybe to say, okay, have you checked that? Like especially, I would look especially on the supply development, that, okay, are you sure that supply development is aligned and everything is okay and stuff like, and then BEE as well. So after that, like I will take their recommendation to EXCO. EXCO then like comprise of GMs.
I'm sorry, before you talk about ESCO, the first committee, CFST.
Yes, Chair.
You said the project manager would be somebody within procurement.
Yes,
is that
Chair.
right?
Yes.
Would the project manager be the same person all the time, or it would depend on each tender? Like
Chair.
maybe it's somebody in charge of the department which needs that particular service or product, or is it just one person all the time?
Actually, when I took over, it was like as you have raised it. It has
Yes.
always been one person. For instance, like for component,
Yes.
it will be certain person. Like for logistics, it will be a
Yeah.
certain person. For tires, it will be a certain person.
Yes.
So, like I mean, those are the things that had changed because, like I
Yes.
mean, we also had a problem of. Like them knowing so much that like they are able to give from inside. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So like I mean,
But you changed that.
I changed that.
So it was, during your time, it became one person throughout.
It became like, I mean, it will be that person who is relevant to that commodity at that time.
Oh, okay.
Yes, Chair, like who is either a specialist or a manager.
Okay, now the people who make up the CFST, would they be under you? Would they fall under your department, procurement, or some would, others would not?
Some would, Chair, and
Yeah.
others would not.
Okay.
For me, for my department, it will be the person that I'm talking about, who is the project manager.
Yes, yeah.
Maybe with one specialist or maybe one buyer to help
Yes.
with the admin, and then like all others, like maybe will be representing different divisions.
Units.
Exactly, like I mean from operations, like QA, finance, legal, and all.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
No, that's fine. I just
Yes.
wanted to understand that. I interrupted you as you were moving on to talking about ESCO's role.
Yeah.
You would take the recommendation to ESCO.
Yes.
Would you take the recommendation after you have satisfied yourself that you are happy with
Yeah.
the recommendation?
Yes.
Or you just take as is?
I usually take it as it is because remember, like, because I don't sit in evaluation team.
Yes, yes.
I'm not there when they are evaluating. So, like, I mean, I usually only would attend their thing if, like, maybe there is some information that I need to pass to them. I would make an example. For instance, if the board meeting, like maybe depending on the delegation of authority at that time, like on what contract that we're running. And then I know that the board meeting will be in 2 weeks' time from that period. So, like, I mean, I will ask, like, before they start, that, like, I mean, okay, guys, you need to know that, like, I mean, we need to move speedily. Like, I mean, the next board meeting is on this date, which is 2 weeks from now. And if we miss that, you must know that, like, we'll still have to wait for, like, I mean, more months and stuff. Like, so, like, that's when I would actually go in, or maybe when they don't, like, really understand the supply development, because at SAT, Chair, the issue of BEE and supply development was just zero. The way I pushed it, there was even a time where it was called Nonsasa's BEE. I had to actually, like, I mean, sit down with my team and made them understand that it was not something that I came up with. It was actually the law. Yeah, so I would attend, like, only on invite, and then yeah, they will do everything independently. So they will recommend to me, and then after certain questions, like, and I'm satisfied with their answers and stuff, like, I will sign. In fact, like, the most issue that, like, I will be looking at, it was to apply my mind and make sure that, like, I mean, the submission is flowing for them, because, like, remember, like, when they do the submission, sometimes they don't, they are not clear of what they are asking for.
Presentation
so, like,
of the
exactly.
issue.
So, like,
Yeah.
I mean, it was my responsibility to ensure that, like, I mean, they to state everything, like, I mean, in detail, so that, I
Yes.
mean, when it gets to the board doesn't have to ask questions and say, okay, go back for the work or anything like that.
Okay.
So, like, after I've satisfied myself with the flowing of the submission, I will sign and then take it to, like, I mean, to the EXCO, which, like, maybe will give us about 3 days before it gets to EXCO.
And signing it, would that be signification that you are happy with the document, including the recommendation, or it would simply be signification that you have seen it?
It will be signification that I'm happy and I'm supporting them on their decision,
Okay.
having satisfied myself that they have followed all the processes.
Okay, no, that's fine.
Then
Okay.
it will go to EXCO,
Yes.
which I said EXCO comprises of the GMs of such general managers, including myself being the HOD at that time. So I also played a role of being the company secretary for EXCO meetings. So the reason why I was part of that is I would sometimes take notes, take minutes for the EXCO and stuff. So it will go to EXCO, and then EXCO will discuss it in detail, raise their questions before it goes to BAC. So once EXCO is happy as well, they also sign just like me and say, okay, we are happy with what has been recommended by the CFST. And then from the EXCO, it goes to BAC. BAC then, Chair, is the bid adjudication committee that comprises of managers or HODs. No, actually it's HODs from SAA and all the subsidiaries of SAA. And then people will sit there and look at the submission. And when BAC look at those submissions, they don't start evaluating again. Their duty is to check if the evaluation was done fairly, transparently, as per the 217 Constitution or the PPPFA. And everything, the National Treasury notes, have been followed and stuff. That's what they look at. And if they see that also, maybe the because sometimes it will happen that the CFST will recommend the bidder that is not the highest scoring bidder and put down the reasons why they do that, maybe risks or something so. The BAC will also ask that, why did you jump the highest scoring bidder? Have you checked? Have you made sure that we won't be taken to court and all that? So those are the things that they look at. And then I must explain, Chair, that when it goes to BAC from SAT, it's not for approval, it's for notification. And even the SCM policy that covers for SAT.
So why are they called adjudication?
I don't know.
It's not for them to adjudicate.
Yeah, okay, there's SAT procurement part has got its own section in the SCM policy, Chair, because of the technical buying of the tools and stuff. So sometimes I think the way it was drafted, it was to ensure that maybe if the tool is needed as an agently, they are able to go out and acquire the tool and then notify BAC. So usually then it will be taken to BAC for notification even afterwards, after it has been acquired. So BAC
just notes.
BAC notes, yes.
But they query if there is something to
query. They query if there's certain things that they don't agree with, based on the relevant legislation that are surrounding. Yes. And then if they need it to go back for work, they send it back. Yeah.
Okay.
Then from there, it goes to the board.
Oh, okay.
Yes, and then the board, being the accounting authority of the organization, they take the decision. Either they agree or they say, okay, subject to, or they overrule the decision of the CFST and the management.
Chair, I do have some follow-up questions, but we've exceeded our tea time schedule. Maybe we should take the break and I can follow up afterwards.
Let's take the tea break. It's 10 to now. We'll resume at 12:05.
Thank you.
We adjourn.
All rise.
Okay, let's continue.
Thank you, Chair. Ms. Memela, thank you for that overview initially in relation to your role. I would like to just pick up on a few clarificatory points. You described a project manager when you were describing the role of the CFST. Do you recall that?
I recall.
Did you ever play the role of project manager in relation to the
CFST?
Yeah.
No.
No. And when bid documents will refer to project manager, is that the CFST project manager?
Yes.
Thank you. And then my next question is just clarificatory again. You said from CFST it goes to EXCO, and then are you a member of EXCO?
I was not a member of EXCO until 2017.
Right.
Yes.
So you then weren't signing off on the BAC recommendation for the 2016 tender as a member of EXCO, is that right?
Okay, you're mixing two different committees.
Right.
EXCO and BAC. They are
So
separate. Chair.
let's do EXCO. Sorry,
Yeah, so,
what I meant to say is CFST, you said makes a recommendation to EXCO, is
Yes,
that right?
yeah.
When the final 5-year...
Well, I thought she said they make a recommendation to her.
Yes,
to you.
Yeah, they make a recommendation to me to check if everything is okay, like, I mean, if they have adhered to relevant laws and everything that is surrounding the process, then, like, I mean, I would sign, I think I understand her question now, I would sign as the HOD SCM. So, like, I think she wants to understand, like, if I sign as a member of EXCO, I sign as HOD SCM. Yeah.
But in so
But
doing...
I'm sorry, just let's get that right, because it's important to understand these things. CFST, do they make a decision, or do they only make a recommendation to somebody or to a committee?
Okay, CFST Chair, they are responsible for evaluation of the bids and stuff. Like, I mean, they go through all the elements. Like, I'm talking from critical criteria, functionality, BEE, price. Then, like, remember, in terms of the PPPFA, they have to go for the highest scoring bidder. So, like, after they have gone through all those elements, and then, like, they will have certain number that they have, like, if depending on the delegation of authority, the amount, like, it will be 90-10. So, like, I mean, they will start counting from there. Then, like, they will then make a recommendation to award or maybe to appoint based on the points that they have come up with, like the highest scoring points.
So are you confirming that what they do is to recommend, not
Yes.
to make the decision themselves?
Yes, Chair.
About who should get the tender?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, the recommendation, was it to you, or would it be a recommendation to EXCO, but it has
Through
to
me.
go via you?
Okay, yeah, but thanks, Chair, for putting it that way. It will be a recommendation to the board. Remember, like, I mean, all the transaction, depending on the delegation of authority, some, like, will be under me, and I think, for me, I only signed for
Up to a certain amount.
Exactly.
Yes.
So, like, I mean, based on the delegation of authority, they will be going to the board. So, like, looking at the price of that certain contract, it will tell you then that it is a board matter. It will go to the board. So, like, they are recommending
To the person who has the power to decide
Exactly.
in terms of delegation
Yes.
of authority.
Yes, Chair.
It could be the board sometimes, it could be somebody else sometimes.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Yes, and then just to add the Chairperson, when they recommend through me, then I recommend at EXCO, and then the CEO then from EXCO, like after it came back from BAC, the CEO then will recommend to the board on behalf of management and
okay.
supply chain, yes.
Okay, so from the BAC, it wouldn't go straight to the board.
It
would
goes
go
through the CEO.
The CEO,
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
So when the final 5-year tender that was eventually awarded to the joint venture of JM Aviation and AAR went to the board, were you a member of management at that time?
As management of SAD?
Yes.
Yes, I was.
Right.
I was the HOD.
Indeed.
Yeah.
So just to follow through, you were explaining a moment ago that it's management that then places the submission before the board for its decision when the value is within their delegation of authority. Is that correct?
It's through the CEO.
Yes.
Yeah.
But he is speaking for management. He's not speaking alone, is he?
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And just help us with what goes to the board on the day that it convenes its meeting to make a decision like this. Do they get all of the bid submissions put before them? What do they get?
You mean like,
In other words, what does the CEO take
Takes
to the board? Yeah, what documents?
Okay, the
Yeah.
CEO takes the submission to the board, which is the summary of what went on within the CFST and what like has been approved or maybe recommended. Yes. Then like it's now a submission that is made to the board. They don't get all these admin who was who and who was not.
Sorry,
Okay,
Chair.
I'm sorry. So the CFST sends a document to you.
Yeah.
That document, would you call it a submission?
It's a submission. Chair.
Yeah, and does it seek to summarize the information that they had before them, before they made the recommendation that they reached, or what?
Yes, they summarize what
Yes.
what they have agreed upon or maybe what
Yes.
they have voted for,
Yes.
and then they would list then the supply, like, what the bidders' names,
Yes.
and then like they would say price,
Yeah.
BEE and stuff like, and then like that's
Yes.
when we start knowing that okay from
Yes.
here like okay there's phase one,
Yeah.
and then from phase one they will explain that okay from phase one. Bidder A or something,
Yeah.
something like they have been disqualified based on this,
Yeah.
and then going to phase two,
Yeah.
we're left with these two bidders,
Yes.
and then like from to phase three, like that.
And when you say the CEO takes the submission to the board, is that the same submission he takes to the board, or would it be a revised submission which has been revised on its journey from the CFST up to CO?
Okay, Chair. When it goes to the board, it's a revised submission.
Okay,
It's no longer the same as
Yes.
the one that was coming from
CSFT.
From CFST. The one that is coming from CFST has got like list of signatures. That is for the person who compiled the recommendation, which is like usually the project manager, and then it will come to me, and then like the members of EXCO, and then like it will go to BAC. Then when it comes from BAC for notification, then it will come back, and then the CEO then like will revise and take exactly what is in there, but now
Puts it in
taken
his
to the
own
board,
way,
it will
yeah.
just be his signature. Yes.
So he would prepare a revised submission, but
Yes, based
which
on-
is based on the
on-
submission that came from CSFST.
Yes, Chair.
Oh, okay.
Except maybe the EXCO was not in agreement. Because
Yes.
also EXCO has had the power to say, okay,
We don't agree.
we don't agree. It's a pity that Ms. Hofmeyer jumped.
Oh, she might come back. don't
Yes.
worry.
So she jumped from where EXCO had the power to actually give feedback and say, okay, don't give to these bidders because of this and that and that,
Yes.
and stuff like that. And then we had to actually cancel and restart.
Yes,
Yeah.
okay. I think she might ask you at some stage about that.
Okay.
But she,
Thank
Ms.
you.
Hofmeyer.
Thank you so much, Chair. And then just in relation to the BAC, your role in the BAC in May of 2016, what was that?
If I remember correctly, Chair, I think I was the chairperson of the BAC.
Thank you.
And I will explain because I think also the public would like to know what the role is in there. So as I said, that the BAC does not do adjudication. They don't evaluate what has already been re-evaluated by the CFST. The only thing that they are looking at are the elements of the PPPFA, the Constitution, and all the legislation that are surrounding this. Then, if they are not happy with certain things, then they will say, okay, please do this before we note. But I will tell you this, Chair, now.
So they check compliance.
They check compliance. If there's for instance, like CFST was not too restrictive in terms of technicalities and stuff like that, and then they check that, okay, there was fairness, there was transparency, there was competitive kind of process. So as I said before, that the BAC notes the submission from SAT. Why? Because SAT has got its own chapter in terms of procurement process because of the kind of commodities that they have to buy. So they unlike SAA that will go to BAC maybe just for approval, SAT will go to BAC for notification. But I don't know, maybe if I will get the evidence later and stuff, but you will see that even though I was the chairperson, all the items that were coming from SAT, I recused myself. Although there was absolutely nothing that I could change and stuff and the BAC would not have any powers to change what has been put in front by the CFST and the EXCO.
Okay.
Yeah.
So did you recuse yourself in relation to the components tender that was awarded in May 2016?
I recused myself from components, and then I remember I recused myself for logistics as well. I think we're also running the tire tender as well.
Thank you. And I'm jumping now ahead to the final tender because that's where we're going to focus some of the evidence today. You indicated that you were part of management who had received the recommendation from the CFST in that process, correct?
Yes, the recommendation is made by CFST based on their evaluation.
Yes.
And the results in the CFST.
And before that then went to the board, as you've described it, did you support the decision taken by CFST in terms of the ranking of Air France first, JM Aviation AAR second, and Lufthansa third?
Okay, as I had mentioned, Chair, that the CFST, I always make sure that their decision is independent from me. They don't feel that I'm actually controlling them to do anything and stuff so. Lufthansa, they have first proposed for Lufthansa to be awarded, and although Lufthansa did not have the supply development commitment or maybe any joint venture with any local company, they submitted that. And I did raise that to the project manager that, okay, maybe we might have a problem here. Because remember, the supply development was part of the requirements of the tender. But of course, based on their preferred or scoring points, Lufthansa was the highest scoring bidder. Remember, the PPPFA says, the award or the tender should be awarded to the highest scoring bidder, and then it gives you exceptions that you could give it to the bidder that is has scored the lowest, but you should be able to justify why you have done that, and it should stand in the court of law. So when they proposed for Lufthansa, they did say also that Lufthansa was low bowling. Lufthansa was extremely cheap. Chair, Lufthansa, as I mentioned, that they were the previous service provider for components at SAT, and they know very well that they will not be able to what do you call this? Afford the components with the amount that they put on their proposal. So they were low bowling, but of course those things can actually be put on a watertight contract to ensure that they're mitigated. So but when they proposed that okay, the board should award, they highlighted the risk that they are picking up from this. As much as they are cheap, there might be a risk later that maybe they will keep on coming back to us and ask for increase. And most multinational companies, most of these big companies, they like to do that, come in and then ask for increase later. So it went to the board. And then the board noticed that it did not go to BAC first. Like, I think they applied the fact that, like, okay, it could go to BAC afterwards, after the fact. I was not there then, like, I mean, when it was tabled to the board, but like, I did support the recommendation of Lufthansa. The board asked again, like, as they have that power to say, go back and rework, and then like, see if it will go to the board, like BAC first before it comes to us. So that's when then, like, I mean, the CFST realized that, okay, I think they think, like, I mean, the risk are quite too high in terms of the price that, like, was put by Lufthansa. I'm sure you'll notice after the ruling of the court, like when France took us to court, like, I mean, Lufthansa just asked why they didn't get the tender, and they understood when we responded to them why they couldn't get the tender. So, like, they went back to the bidders and say, okay, please sharpen up your pencil and see if, like, I mean, because Air France at that time was still a bit expensive. I think AJ Walters was extremely expensive. They had already been disqualified. Maybe, I don't remember, but, like, I mean, it was Air France, Lufthansa, and AAR. So, like, they were still a bit up, and then, like, they went down. And I want to state it on record, Chairperson, that, like, I mean, the purpose of going out on this tender and the purpose of, like, I mean, testing the market before this final one, which was for 5 years, was to ensure that, like, we get as much saving as possible. Because, like, remember, the company had raised that the money that, like, was charged by Air France was extremely high, and there was even a 70 million delta that no one could explain why SAT was paying so much. You know, so, like, I mean, charging, like, I mean, testing the market and going up and making sure that, like, the CFST goes back was to make sure that, like, we get the value for money and much, much more cheaper than what we were paying Air France before.
Ms. Memela, I think we might have been at cross purposes because the process that you've described now, as I understand it, is the process where the bidders kept being approached again for their best and final offers. Is that right?
Yes.
What I had actually asked was whether you supported the final recommendation that was made to the SART board, because you'll recall that was in May of 2016,
yeah.
And that was the recommendation that it be awarded to Air France, and that second in the running was JMAAR, and third in the running was Lufthansa. And the question was, did you support that position?
Okay, let me correct you, Keith. Lufthansa was not the third in the running. Lufthansa was the first in the running. Well, and followed by, I'm just talking in terms of the preferential, like, I mean, the
ranking.
The ranking, yes. But, like, I understand your question. You're saying, like, did I support the recommendation to the board, like, to award Air France?
Yes.
Yes, I signed for Air France.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'd now like to move to the entity JM Aviation and understand from you when you were first introduced to that entity.
When was I first introduced? Okay, Chair. I was not formally introduced because, like, I'm trying to understand this question. I was not formally introduced to JM. Let me just, like, I mean, put the brief background first, like, about JM. We had JM International. That has been our supplier at SAT since 1992. And there has been then all these workshop in terms of bringing in black-owned suppliers and stuff. So, like, I mean, during the workshops, like, that's when I get to meet some of the black-owned suppliers. And the instruction from the board at that time was that procurement SAA, procurement SAT, procurement chefs, like, people, like, I mean, we're told that, okay, you need to go to the procurement team and register your names down and then ask for maybe the list of tenders that are about to go out. You know, so, like, they were also told that, okay, they are welcome to approach these multinational companies, and then, like, I mean, they will be given support from SAA as a whole and SAT and chefs. So, like, I mean, I got to know like some of the directors of JM like from those workshops.
And I understood from your statement that those workshops commenced in around 2015. Is that right?
They commenced around 2015.
And who in particular did you meet in 2015 from JM Aviation South Africa?
I think I may have met Mr. Nzeku.
And had you met Ms. Sokulu at that stage?
She was not there.
At the supply development workshop?
Yes, she was not the one that like I attended, her father attended at Midrand.
And was that, I have a recollection that was in the middle of the year. Am I right in that, or do you have a better recollection?
I think it was around like May, June.
Mm. And you say Mr. Nzeku attended that, but Ms. Sokulu didn't?
I don't remember if she was there, but like I just remembered like Mr. Nzeku was there. That's when we got to chat during the workshops.
Yes.
Yes.
And was he...
I chatted with like lots of BEE suppliers during these workshops. In fact, even outside the workshops, that includes even Ms. Sambo. Ms. Sambo, like when she testified here, like she did mention that, I did assist her, and I gave her certain documentation and stuff. I think you'll get to that later. But I did not only meet with Mr. Nzeku and assist JM. I have had that responsibility, which was actually recorded on my job description. I don't know if you have my job description. The supply development BEE is part of my job description, Chair. And then also it was also part of the enterprise supplier development strategy that was started in 2014. And then there was an MOU between DTI and SAA to ensure that the transformational agenda is pushed hard. So because I just want to give clarity before Council continues with the question, that the role that I played was to be as close as possible to these BEE suppliers. As I said, that there were no BEE suppliers at SAT, in our database. And you'll notice that, Mr. Nzeku was not part of the list of black-owned suppliers that was tabled to the board to notify them that, okay, we are progressing in terms of bringing in black-owned suppliers. Chair, I might have ruffled a lot of feathers, by doing that, because for the first time, SAT, as the state-owned company, they had somebody who was pushing so hard for black people, and then there were certain questions, not just from Open Water, from Ernst & Young and stuff, because where they would just ask you, that okay, do you know Sibongile Sambo? Is she your cousin or something like that? And I remember I lost it at that time, Chairperson, because my understanding and the view in South Africa is that once you interact with a black supplier, being a black person, automatically there's fraud or corruption involved. So I had to deal with all those things. And I even said when I was actually listening to Ms. Sambo, that if she had managed to actually have a JV contract with AR, not dump each other, on the 5-month contract before the last one, and then they won on the final one. I will be sitting here again, Chairperson, defending myself against another black-owned supplier or maybe any other person saying you were too close, you interacted too much, you favored them and stuff and so that's the reality of the matter, that when you support a black person, when you talk to them privately, trying to guide them and stuff it's assumed that there's fraud involved or there's corruption. And when you look into this, Chair, I'm sorry, Kate, I have to state this on record. For instance, I did mention that there are lots of evergreen contracts at SAT. SAT is a state-owned company. It's supposed to, balance what they need from others when they run tender in terms of the BEE status and stuff they also should exercise same. So and that was not done. As long as the contract is between the white suppliers, I'm not playing a race card, Chair, but I'm just stating the facts that I met at SAT when I took over this position. That when I gave instruction to ensure that for the supplier to get the tender or business, they have to meet these requirements, supplier development requirements. I went as far as touring Europe, US, and everywhere, like letting them know about the laws of this country, because nobody has ever done that. These companies have been at such, having contracts for since 1999. Nobody questioned that. Nobody questioned the fact that, the NIP obligation was not adhered to. Of course, it's controlled and managed by DTI, but somebody should have, maybe the accounting authority or the accounting officer being the CEO. So, I had that role, also protecting the CEO, protecting the board, and saying, okay, we push hard. So, when I listened to Ms. Sambo, saying all those things, and I said, it's a pity that I can't mention, the BEE suppliers by others by name, that I have given them, the same help, given them the same help as JM or Ms. Sambo or anybody else. For instance, Air France had Kwane Capital, as their black-owned company, and I was pushing also for them because they only had the MOU between Kwane Capital being the black-owned company in South Africa and then Air France. And if you noticed, Kate, if you did not jump there, or maybe you'll go back, you'll notice that, when Air France bidded in 2015, they bidded with Kwane Capital. But whatever that they had promised in terms of supply development, they never delivered. There are certain letters that I wrote pushing Air France and making sure that they adhere to what they had confirmed with the local supplier. Nobody, Chairperson, has gone through my emails and has gone through my laptop and actually pick up all those things that I had raised. The focus is only on JM.
Yes.
And Chair, sorry, the open water report, I did say I will explain this. The open water report, the open water came in around 2015. And they came for the main purpose. The first one was the fact that, SAD was losing assets left, right, and center, will buy spares worth millions of rands. And then later on, the spares have been lost. And then we have to buy again. There was some sort of a syndicate happening, And then that was the first one. And the fact that there was the scrap that belonged to SAD, but they still had value. And somebody sold the scrap for zero value instead of 175 million. So I was actually mentioning all those things when I talked to the team of investigators that, guys, I feel that you are being selective in terms of who you focus on, where the focus is on, where it actually names and mentions white people that have made sure, SAD that loses a whole lot of money through assets, through everything. Nobody is looking back at there.
Yes, okay. Ms. Memela, the Commission obviously won't finish its job if it is to look at everything. In the process, it has to prioritize. And in prioritizing, there may be people who won't agree with its decision to prioritize that or that. But what you and everyone else have been invited to do since the Commission started is to give the information, give the Commission any information you have which you think may relate to matters that fall within its terms of reference. So some people have done so, and they might have focused on certain contracts, and then maybe you haven't given the Commission information focusing on the contracts on which you would have liked it to also look at. So, but even now, feel free, if later on you would like to send documentation, a statement to the Commission to say, here are other things that fall under the Commission's terms of reference that you might not be aware of, and the Commission can look at that. Of course, it's public knowledge that I have said that the Commission will probably have to secure a narrowing of its scope if it is to finish its work. But I have said that there may be matters that are brought to my attention, and I might say that one seems to be important. But those that might not be looked into by the Commission would have to be looked into by some other agency. So I'm just explaining that part. I suggest that what we should do is answer the questions that Ms. Hofmeyer puts to you.
Okay.
If you feel that you need to add some information in order to ensure that you do justice to your answer, that's fine.
Okay.
But I'll be quite happy when you are done to give you a chance if there is something else that wasn't raised by Ms. Hofmeyer with you, which you think you would like to deal with in order for there to be fairness in terms of your own role and so on.
Yes.
Is that all right?
That's all right.
Okay, all right.
Thank you, Chair. So, Ms. Memela, just to clarify, when you first met Mr. Nzeku at that workshop in Midrand in May, June 2015, was he introduced to you as a JM Aviation South Africa representative?
Oh, he introduced himself as as an individual, not as JM. I am not sure when JM was registered, but I do know that.
I think it was about October 2015. Does
Yes,
that accord with your recollection?
Yes, that's yeah. So he introduced himself as himself, not as the director of. Remember, the only JM that we were aware of was JM International.
But by October of 2015, when they joined the supplier database, were you aware of his link then to JM Aviation?
They didn't join the supplier database in October
2015.
2015. Can you?
Maybe we can return to it.
Okay.
If you want to get the specific date, that is
Okay.
the recollected date that I have. But I just want to know at what point in time you made the association between Mr. Nzeku and JM Aviation South Africa. Would that have still been within 2015?
I think it was somewhere in 2016. I don't remember exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And Ms. Sokulu, when did you make the association between her and JM Aviation?
Ms. Sokulu came in, I think, for that negotiation for the GPUs. When was it? Was it on 2016, I think?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And did you know that they were father and daughter?
I think it was introduced sometime later when there was the negotiation of the contract chair of JM and AR. Yeah.
And did you know that Mr. Nzeku was a director of Swissport South Africa when you met him in 2015?
Of course, when we talked, because, I think I can't remember everything that we chatted about, Chair, but I do know that, he did introduce himself saying, okay, he does have a lot of aviation experience through Swissport and all that.
I'd then like to move to the property purchase that you made for a house in Bedford View. Ms. Memela, during your involvement in these two contracts, that's the one involving the sale of the GPUs and the one involving the component support services that was awarded to the joint venture of JM Aviation and AAR, there was an amount of 2.5 million rand paid towards a house you were buying in Bedford View by JM Aviation. Is that correct?
The deposit was 1.5. So, the amount was the amount of the land bought.
Sorry, I don't understand that.
I'm saying the deposit of the house was 1.5. The amount of the land was 2.5. That was bought by Mr. Nzeku.
No, sorry. My question is, when you bought your Bedford View house in 2016, JM Aviation paid 2.5 million rand towards the purchase of that house. Is that correct?
That's correct, but it was not JM Aviation, it was Mr. Nzeku. It may have come from JM Aviation. I explained that already to the investigating team, and I gave the proof for that.
Well, let's go through that if we can. I understand your account of it is at page 21 of your statement. That's in DD 25A.
Yeah.
And you start there to deal with the background to this payment of 2.5 million.
Yes.
And you indicate that it involved a sale by your mother of 2 properties. Is
Yes,
that correct?
That's correct.
What were those 2 properties that she sold?
Okay, it was like the land in Eastern Cape. Che. It was the land in Eastern Cape at Mpindweni, and the other one, like it was a land in Mbogi. So like the amount that was paid for the purchase, it was actually made to be paid for the purchase in Eastern Cape for coverage, and then because it took longer to happen, and then like it was redirected to the amount of the house in Bedfordview when the bank approved a certain percentage, and then I needed a deposit.
Maybe, Ms. Hofmeer, maybe we must give you a chance to explain how it came about that payment was made, whether by JM or by Mr. Nzeku.
Yes.
I know you have given this explanation here, but the people who are listening haven't read this, and it's something that has come up publicly. You might wish to just explain, to say, this is how Mr. Nzeku or JM came to pay for my house. These are the circumstances. Then Ms. Hofmeer will ask you the questions.
Okay, Chair. In 2015, I was purchasing a property in Coveridge in Eastern Cape, and like it took longer to be finalized. And then like I started looking for a property to live in here in Johannesburg, as I was living in Albertine. So like, I mean, at the time when it was finalized, before it was finalized, like the bond from Standard Bank, like they approved a certain percentage. I remember at that time, like they were quite strict with approval, like of 100% bond and stuff. So like the deposit was needed. Some of the deposit was coming from my husband's pension fund, and some of the deposit was coming from the the amount that was coming from the land purchase of my mother. And I did ask also like that. The fact that, like, I mean, it was coming from JM, account, it was coming from Mr. Nzeku, because, like, the deal was between Mr. Nzeku and my mother, not JM.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Ms. Hofmeer?
So let's just unpack that a bit, if we may. You indicated that there were 2 properties that your mother sold to Mr. Nzeku,
Yes.
Located in the Eastern Cape. Is that correct?
That's correct.
How was she introduced to Mr. Nzeku?
Okay, my mom came for the eye operation in Johannesburg in 2015, and I told her about, like, I mean, the intention to buy the property in Eastern Cape and stuff like that. And she showed interest that, okay, like, I have this kind of part of lands, and, like, I mean, she had also land in Mvuzi at Mount Frere and stuff like, I mean, so, like, she said she would sell some of the properties. At that time, like, there was quite an interest. Like, I mean, when you talk to some of the BEE partners, like, or some of the BEE suppliers, like, who were actually interested in buying certain properties in Eastern Cape, like, to develop and do other things, like, do other projects. So I remember, like, I mean, most of them, like, I mean, they bought, like, from Mbogi, and, like, I mean, the one at Mpindweni is actually next to Mzimvubu, and it was from my mother's parents.
So did you put her in touch with Mr. Nzeku?
Yes, I actually said, like, I mean, because Mr. Nzeku, from our discussions, like, I mean, when we chat, like, he did explain that he was looking for the property in Eastern Cape, and everybody's buying, and he has so many projects to run, and, like, I mean, yeah, so I introduced him.
And what did you understand he wanted to do with the property?
At that time, like, I mean, he did not explain what he wanted to do.
And what type of property is it?
It's the land.
Sorry,
like,
there are 2 properties. Yes.
They are the land, like, I mean, where my mother's parents, like, used to have the land in Mpindweni, and then they moved to another, and then they left that one under her.
Can it be used for business purposes or not?
It can be used for business purposes because it's next to the river, and it's next to the fields, Chair.
So is it zoned for business purposes?
Yes, like, I think his interest was for that. And, Chair, just to add, when I was asked by the investigating team, around this, from open water report, they had said my property was, the deposit was coming from, the increase of my salary. And I had corrected that. Also, Ms. Sambo said the same thing, that it was the increase of my salary, also Mr. Human. So I explained to them that these are the facts. And I think this is the part where I said I didn't understand the reference or maybe the link between purchase of my property versus the tenders that were running at that time.
When Open Waters was probing with you the salary increase, did you say to them, no, the money for my Bedford View house didn't come from the salary increase, it came from the deposit from Mr. Nzeku?
Okay, Chairperson, let me give clarity to this. Open Water never gave me an opportunity to state my side of the story. At the time when they started checking this, they actually they took everything from my laptop, and then everything from whoever that they listened to, instead of coming to me and asking me questions, because I would have clarified at that point where my deposit came from. But they've written what they thought was happening, and as a result of this, Chair, certain people nearly got fired, because from HR, the recommendation for my salary was made from HR and stuff so. I want to put it on record, to case that Open Water never asked me about the purchase of my property. I only find out when the team, the Zondo team, started asking questions.
But they did engage you about the salary increase?
They did not engage about the salary increase. I only heard about it when I think Asin Malwarapiri, who was the acting chairperson, acting CEO of SAT, wanted to find out how is my salary being discussed, relating to the tender and stuff and he said some of the questions that were coming from the commission's team was that maybe it was gratification or payment from top management to me for a job well done. I'm not sure what job well done, but they were linking to that. Open Water never talked to me about my salary increase. They talked to everybody else except me.
And we were at the point where you indicated you had introduced your mother to Mr. Nzeku.
Yeah.
He wanted to buy 2 properties for her for business purposes. Is that correct?
Okay, I'm not clear. I think he will be the right person to actually
Indeed.
Answer that question.
No, I'm interested at the moment about your understanding of his intentions for the property.
Okay, I didn't understand at that time, so I think he will be a correct person to actually answer that one.
And do you know when he concluded the purchase with your mother?
I think it was concluded between 2015 and 2016. I'm not sure about the year, but I think it was concluded around there.
And do you know what the sale price was?
For Mpindweni, it was 2.5, I think. These documents belong to my mother, not me. So I'm actually talking on her behalf. Yeah, so and then the Mboki, it was I think 500,000.
Are you sure that both transactions went through?
I'm not sure right now. That's one of the things that I was trying to figure out. But those are the questions that were not asked. During the investigating meeting. So I think Mr. Nzeku is the right person to actually answer that.
Why do you say
but
that?
But I know that the Mpindweni one went through because he paid for that one.
Why do you say those questions weren't asked during the meetings with the commission?
No, I'm saying the question that you're asking now, if if I'm aware that they went through. Yes.
Do you recall being asked to provide the commission with all the supporting documents for this transaction?
I was not asked to submit the supporting documents. I was asked to explain, and then Mr. Kirtland, Chair, said, "Are you sure? Do you have the title deed? Do you have an offer to purchase? Do you have this and that?" So I responded to that. So this is I think where I had said I would appreciate if the team sends me specific written questions so that I'm able to answer properly, and then I attach exactly what is required.
Would you like me to take you to the email where it was specifically requested that you provide the supporting documents?
You can take me to that email.
And it's with reference, Ms. Sambo, to where you say in your own...
Ms. Memela.
Apologies, Ms. Memela. Where you say in your email that you have... there are papers to support this. I first want to give you that reference. So you'll find it at page 21 of Exhibit DD25A, and it's at paragraph 48. If you look at paragraph 48, just before the bottom of the page, you've been talking there about this very transaction, right? And when you get to paragraph 48, you're talking about the purchase agreement to sell the 2 properties, and then you talk about Cove Ridge, and then you see in the second last line, you have a sentence, there are papers to support this. Do you see that?
I see that. Like I thought you were directing me to the email that I
No,
received.
I want to locate, because the email refers specifically to this sentence in this paragraph of your statement. So that's why I wanted you to have the benefit of seeing this sentence in this paragraph of your statement. Chair, for this purpose, I need to take Ms. Memela to a correspondence bundle, which hasn't been handed in yet. I do note that we're close to the tea break. I'm happy to do it now. It just involves handing out documents. Otherwise, we can do it when we return from the, I beg your pardon, lunch break.
Yes, what's convenient to you? Is it something that's short and...
It's fairly short, Chair,
Yeah,
so we can hand it up. Let's do that. If I may beg leave then to just hand up to yourself, Chair, a correspondence bundle that's been prepared, and to Ms. Memela.
This hasn't been admitted as yet, huh?
It has not, Chair. It was really a correspondence bundle put together in anticipation of Ms. Memela possibly making application today not to appear. But it was only compiled overnight. But if we could enter it as...
well, there are 2 ways of dealing with it. For now, you just want to refer to one email.
I do indeed.
Do you contemplate that you'll be referring to this correspondence file much later?
No, not at all, unless something arises in Ms. Memela's testimony that's at odds.
What we could do is maybe just take out, make a copy of the email, and then we add it to her file.
Indeed.
And then for purposes of asking questions with her, we relate to that without admitting this.
Indeed,
this whole
Chair.
file, yeah.
I'm indebted to you for that. What I'll do for present purposes is just, if I may, direct you to the pagination in the file, but then we will extract it.
Yes.
And insofar as the pagination is concerned, I must just begin with an apology. This was originally put together as a file of more than 800 pages, but it included an enormous amount of repetition. So overnight in preparation for today, I'd stripped out the repetition, but the consequence of that is that the pagination doesn't run beautifully from 1 to whatever. It retains the old pagination, but it still moves numerically. We'll just have to find the page I'm looking for is page 398. 398 of the correspondence bundle.
398.
398.
Okay.
So if you page, it won't move beautifully in numerical order, but it does move progressively.
What I was saying is maybe we should take it out here, give it a page number for this one, so when you refer to it, you refer to the page number as
we've extracted it.
Yes. Yeah. So I think that might be
preferable.
preferable.
Then I'm going to ask if you would not mind taking out from 398 all the way to 422, because this is an email that has an attachment to it.
Yes. Okay.
And we're going to need to look at the attachment.
Should it not be 423? I see that the second page.
Sorry, 442, if I said that incorrectly.
442.
Yes. It's the last page of a draft affidavit.
But at this stage, you just want to refer to that email only.
And I'll take you to one page in the attached document. So, Chair, for now, my proposal is let's work with the pagination in red at the top, if we may. Then I will indicate how that pagination changes when we put it into the file, so that the record will be able to reflect that change.
But we put it at the back of Ms. Memela's
Indeed.
bundle.
I suggest at the back of DD 25B.
So where are we now?
Or at the end of DD 25B?
B, yes.
Oh, okay.
Because that is the end of the additional
I'm sorry,
documents.
Ms. Memela, we have left you out of this discussion. I think somebody will help you afterwards.
Indeed.
Yeah.
We will rearrange Ms. Mamela's file. For now, she
Yeah.
can leave it in the correspondence bundle.
I'm sorry, we didn't tell you not to.
Apologies.
Okay, so we go to the end of that bundle.
Indeed.
You see, what I wanted us to do is that if, for now, you are only going to refer to that email, we may just paginate that email
Yes,
only
yes.
sequentially
Yes.
with this. Then you can do the rest of the pagination during the lunch break or whatever.
Well, why don't we do that? I
Yes.
can refer to what follows, but we'll do the pagination without having to go there in the
Yes.
lunch break. I
Yes.
think that makes eminent sense,
Yes.
if I may.
Yes.
So the current bundle, DD 25B, ends on page 670, as I have it.
Yes, yes.
So we would paginate this from 671.
Yes.
Ms. Memela, this is an email sent by the Commission's investigator, Mr. Kirtland, to yourself. Is that correct?
Okay, which one now? Like a-
Sorry, so in
Yeah.
the top right-hand corner, the red paginated page is 398. Do you have that?
398, yeah.
Yes. Do you confirm that it's an email from Mr. Kirtland to yourself?
It's an email coming from Mr. Kirtland to myself on the 14th of January.
Thank you. Chair, just to give a little bit of background to the chronology that precedes this, it's in the correspondence. We can go there if any aspect of it is disputed by Ms. Memela, but in the interest of time, I just propose to summarize it so that this email can be placed in context. There'd been engagements with Ms. Memela at the end of last year and a meeting with the legal team and the investigators. And there was a follow-up from January and later in December about an affidavit that she was going to provide to the Commission. What happens around this time is Ms. Memela had put in an email to the Commission, her account of the topics. And Mr. Kirtland was following up about converting that account in the email to an affidavit. And what Mr. Kirtland had done by this stage is actually placed it into an affidavit format for Ms. Memela. And he'd gone through the affidavit and indicated to her specific questions to follow up from the broad account that she had given. And so what is detailed in this email is precisely that. He indicates in the second paragraph that Ms. Memela had requested that we provide her with a standard template of an affidavit used by the Commission and highlight the questions that we still wanted her to address. And then she said, I'll just copy and paste to the affidavit. And what Mr. Kirtland was explaining was precisely what he'd done the previous week. And you'll see the attachment is first the summons, a copy of the summons that was sent as a courtesy to Ms. Memela, and then the affidavit that had been sent to Ms. Memela from page 424. And Chair, if you just scroll into that affidavit to page 437.
Yes.
You'll see paragraph 52 at that page is basically a replica of paragraph 48 in her current statement before the Commission. And you'll see 4 lines from the bottom, it says, there are papers to support this. This is the exact same paragraph we were looking at in her statement.
Okay, I thought you were going to show us the email that I said like I would send the documentation, but like it's okay, Chair. Like I mean, I'm sure there is another email where I'd written to Mr. Kitland saying, because like he did indicate that he had sent me a draft affidavit like with the comments. And
Yes,
I said,
no, that's fine. Just
Yes.
hang on.
Yeah.
Let her finish.
Okay.
And then when you have a chance, then you can respond, yeah.
Yes. Ms. Memela, we are going through this exercise because my questions began with a query about your knowledge of the sale agreements. And I'd said to you that we had previously requested that you provide us with those agreements.
Yeah.
And as I understood your testimony, you said, no, we had not made that request. And that is why I'm moving to this document to show you where we made that request previously.
Okay,
Would
from
you
the
look-
affidavit.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So in the affidavit, at what is paragraph 52 of the affidavit on page 437, you'll see a paragraph beginning, my mother then entered into a purchase agreement. Do you see that?
Yeah.
And do you see further down in that paragraph, there is the sentence, 4 lines from the bottom, starting at the end that says, there are papers to support this. Do you see that?
Yeah.
And do you see the comment bubble on the right-hand side of that page that from Mr. Kirtland saying, please attach all the papers and correspondence in this regard?
I'm seeing it now, Chair. But like as I said, like but you said like I will answer later. But like as I said that
Yes, now that she has asked you the question, you can
Okay.
you can
Yeah.
deal with it, yeah.
yes, I indicated to Mr. Kitland that I was using my phone, and then like I mean the comments were not appearing and stuff like so. I couldn't see like I mean the comments on the side, and then he had to resend
Yes.
like I mean the word, and then like not with this because I said okay I'm using the phone, so it does not have that option for me to actually check the comments that he had made. So like I mean I have nothing against like submitting the documentation as promised. Like I can still submit that from my side. So like I did not maybe
You did
keep
not see.
them like I mean because I did not want to submit.
Yeah,
I
okay.
do have them, but like I mean they could follow afterwards.
Yeah.
It's just that like Chair, what I wanted to know was that like I mean I just needed to know because like Mr. Kitland only said like the link between my purchase of the property and the reason why it's actually raised here is the fact that I purchased it during the time when the component tender was taking place and stuff like so. I was trying to understand, like I actually like I mean wrote to Mr. Kitland as well asking what is the link? Like I mean is it because of the director had bought the land, or is it because like I mean it was bought at the same time, and or maybe there's just an assumption or suspicions that like maybe it was like I mean the money for the tender, which is I don't understand like I mean because yeah.
Okay,
So
but
I
you say
wanted
you
to
are
find-
happy to
yeah.
provide the documents.
I will provide the document, but like I
Yes.
mean I'm saying also Chair I will provide the documentation as I promised, but like I mean
Yes.
I also want to know what Ms. Hofmeyer
Yeah.
like I mean question is directed to, like I mean what is the link between my property and the tender.
Yeah,
Yes.
no, that's fine.
Yeah.
She still has quite some questions for you. Maybe, or are you done with this part?
Indeed, Chair,
This
I
part?
understand there to be a concession by Ms.
Yes.
Memela, so we can move on after the lunch
Yes.
break.
Okay, all right. I think we'll take the lunch adjournment, and then you can do the pagination of
Indeed.
these, and when we resume, maybe for purposes of the transcript, you can just announce what the new
I'll do
pages
that
are.
precisely. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, okay. We are going to adjourn now, and it's 1:05. We'll resume at 2:05.
Okay.
We adjourn.